Welcome to the Civil Defense Caves of eastern Idaho. I came here to tell you the story of a mysterious unsolved murder and a body that wasn't identified until only a few years back. The story goes that in 1979 a couple of hikers were exploring the cave, and a brief history of the caves and why they're called Civil Defense Caves is because during the Cold War they used these caves for storage for civil defense. The idea being, we're here 30 miles away from the nearest real city and it's cold year-round, it would store supplies perfectly, and it was basically a prepper's paradise. But nobody would ever be able to live down here. It's too cold. It's actually freezing right now, and I'm sorry if I start panting. I'm not used to the cold here. Well, they found a torso inside of a burlap sack half buried in the ground, and this was in 1979. Well, years pass, and in 1991, more explorers find arms and legs scattered around the inside of the cave. It's at this point in time that police see it's important to actually put the remains together and start investigating. Well, in 2006, I believe, the DNA Doe project takes up the case. And DNA Doe, their goal is to find the DNA from the various unsolved murders around the country and try to determine who it came from. This is usually done by compiling 23andMe results and seeing if any relatives are still alive. And what happened was they've determined that it was from Joseph Henry Loveless, who was wanted for bootlegging and murdering his wife. He'd escaped from jail in 1916, and actually he was still wearing the same clothing that he was in on his wanted poster when he escaped. He was a bootlegger during Prohibition, and he was born down in Utah Territory. He married a woman there in 1899, and by 1903 she'd filed for divorce. He had a kid with her, and then he abandoned her. She sued him for just leaving the family out on their own, and after the state approves of the divorce, he moves up to Idaho and marries a local girl. And that doesn't go very well for very long, because before even a few years was up, he had killed her with an axe. And they very quickly convicted him, but at the jail in St. Anthony, he smuggled in a saw blade in his shoe. And even at the trial, when they were talking to his children, they asked, well, what's going to happen? And they said, oh, Dad never stays in jail for too long. He'll get out before you know it. Well, he gets out of jail, and no one ever sees him again. In fact, he's wearing the same clothing that he is found in when he's found in this cave in the 1970s. And what's now thought is that the family of the woman he murdered probably tracked him down as soon as he escaped from jail. And it conjures up images of, you can imagine them just watching the jail, because he escaped after 1 or 2 days, and they just picked him up. And they bring him out to the Civil Defense Caves. Of course, at the time, they wouldn't be called the Civil Defense Caves, but this is an incredibly remote area of the country. He was probably dead before he got here, but, it's over miles and miles of sand dunes and lava fields, and you would never find him. At least not in their lifetimes, because he was found in 1979, and the police only started looking into it in 1991 when more remains were found. Oh man, I'm just grateful this isn't my car. Sorry, Tay. I won't kill your suspension, I promise. But also look at all this. All these domes, they could be caves. There could be caves underneath these, because that's the way lava works. You can tell because of the way it is. But it's crazy to think of all of the mysterious things that might be going on underground. Finding one torso in 1979 is one thing, but there are tiny little entrances to these tubes that very few people know about, and that scares the hell out of me. And it took until 2019 for the DNA Doe project to actually process his DNA. And because of the fact that his family was an enormous polygamous family from Utah, they were able to very easily find a DNA result which matched to him from one of his relatives, because he had, hundreds of relatives. So they probably laid him to rest. He has an unmarked grave, or a grave with no date of him being laid to rest, down in Utah where he was originally born. But I don't know if his remains have ever been properly buried there, because the case itself is still an unsolved murder case, so his remains might still be at the county coroner. I mean, when they found him, they thought he'd only died a couple of years ago because of the cold conditions of the cave. Something could survive down here without totally skeletonizing for 100, 200 years.